Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose.
How you doing this morning, Jerrod?
I'm feeling awesome, my friend. Life is good. I'm full of nature and woodpeckers and squirrels and chipmunks.
Yeah, you got to get some peacocks up there now, man.
I don't know that peacocks are they don't like this. I got turkeys instead. I'll trade you peacocks for wild turkeys. How are you doing?
There you go. I'm doing well, man. I just got back from Fort Collins last night and had a really good trip. It was my first trip back since moving out to Florida, and it was a very interesting experience in the sense that I had some emotions and thoughts arising, a little nostalgia, a place where I've been day in, day out for 4 years, got to go to trials and train, walk back into the B-Nails office, got to go to some areas that I used to spend a lot of time in. So it was good. And I'm still kind of processing everything in that trip. So it was good. It was one of those experiences that I know there's like realizations and growth on the other end because I had just emotions and thoughts arise within me.
Yeah. What were the initial ones?
The initial ones were like, man, I miss a lot of the people here, mainly around community, what we talk about, how important your circle of five is. And I think one thing that I noticed is I haven't been doing the best job that I can here in Florida of consciously building community. I've allowed myself to kind of get a little too wrapped up in work and just exploring with Courtney, her and I going to the beach and going to these cool places. But now 3 months in, it's just starting to affect me of like, whoa, I need to make some friends. I need to have some community around here. And it takes a conscious effort to do that. So I'm going to make sure that I take that I have a little bit more of a conscious effort of building that over here in Florida.
Yeah, and I would just tell you, man, to give yourself a little bit of grace too. You know what I mean? You're going through a lot with business stuff and moving, and maybe you don't have a ton of external social right now and big groups like you had in Fort Collins that have been built over years, but it's a good time for you and Courtney to really build yourselves. So when you do build social, you're on a solid foundation. You know what I mean? So I think it's good. We're kind of in the same boat. Andrea and I spend more time together now than we have probably ever in our lives because the kids are off doing their thing, and we're up in Wyoming, just out in the middle of nowhere. So it's fun to grow that as well without the distractions of all the external obligations or other places you got to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it has been, and I'm grateful for that too, because Courtney and I have connected here in ways that were more difficult to connect in when we were in Fort Collins.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, it's time to build some community, baby.
And it'll be kind of fun for you guys to build a community that's for both of you. Whereas before, like, she was kind of bringing you into her already built community, and you were bringing her into your built communities, and this is kind of fun to do it together. And that's kind of what Andrea and I are looking forward to, because so much of our life, like our community, revolved around our kids' sports, right? Because you start traveling with other parents, so you're automatically going to hang out with them, or my work, or the gym. And it was usually like predominantly my community that was built, and she kind of just joined in. Whereas now we can actually go out and build it together. So it's going to be kind of fun to do that.
Yeah. And those are great opportunities, right? Of like, I like how you said kind of automatically hang out with people. And I think that's a big reason why so many of us say like, oh, the good old days or the golden years or whatever were in places where you had opportunities to automatically connect with people, high school, college, right? To where when you're in the working world, especially now post-COVID, where a lot of us have remote jobs, you really have to make an effort to connect with people and to build relationships and build friendships. So I think now it's more important than ever to make sure that you not only build new ones, especially if you're someone in a new place, in a new town, but also like nurture those relationships, because it's easy to just let technology kind of replace some of this. Oh, I'm doing my Zoom calls, I'm doing my whatever. But I have firsthand seen of like, whoa, okay, like even me, a very extroverted, outgoing person, I believe that I have very good people skills and I'm able to make friends pretty easily. I'm even finding difficulty in like, okay, I need to actually like really make a conscious effort to do this. So some food for thought for the community there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it should always be conscious, and it's funny because a lot of people spend their high school years just, they can't wait to get out of high school. And then they get to later in life and those are the days they always look back to of like, they were the best days. And I do think a lot of it is because you didn't have the pressure to build social circles. You were just automatically thrown in them.
Right.
Whereas adults, you got to kind of take some ownership of your social circles and really put some work into it. So, yeah, I think it'll be fun for you guys to build that community. I can't wait to come down there in November and see what kind of community you guys have built. I'm especially looking forward to the Cuban food side of your community.
Yeah, I'll have to explore some of that before you get here because we still have not gone to the Cuban spots we've been recommended. But I do have some other good spots.
Little Cuban coffee, and I know you don't eat pork, but those Cubano sandwiches, oh man, we'll be in heaven down there. So let's talk this week, Ali. I've been thinking about this, and I want to talk through this for our community, is your identity crisis. What you do or who you are. I want people to think about that for a second. What you do or who you are. And then I want everybody to pause for a minute and think of how they introduce themselves, or what's the first question you usually ask somebody that introduces themselves to you. Right? And I bet for most people it's going to go like this. Like I would introduce myself, hey, Ali, I'm Jerrod, nice to meet you. And, you would say, hey, I'm Ali, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, okay, cool. What is it? What do you do? Right? Like one of the first questions I'm going to throw at you is, what do you do? Like I'm already trying to establish value to you based on how you make some money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you think about, like we almost always do that. Like it's one of the first conversation starters. And what happens if they tell you they do something that maybe they're not proud of, or that you just put no value to? Do we stay engaged in that conversation, or do we look to move on to somebody that has a more esteemed title for influence, or the perceived influence?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Think about that. Like, what would we do? You're at a networking event, right? And you meet somebody, and he's like, "Oh, well, I do tech stuff or some small whatever he says." That you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm really here to meet the big shots."
Mm.
Would you stay engaged in that conversation, or do you move on and introduce yourself to somebody else who's like, "Well, I'm the vice president of worldwide, blah 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 blah," and then you go further in that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think we've all been guilty of that at some point. And then I think we all, well, I can't say all, but I know me for sure. When I ask that question, or now I really try not to ask that question, but when I used to ask that question, it's almost like we're assigning value very early in a conversation about, will we pursue this conversation more? Is it somebody worth spending time with, based on simply how they make a living?
Mm.
Right now, I'll tell you personally, this is how it went for me, and it used to drive me crazy. No matter whose barbecue we went to, social function we went to, if I was there as your guest, but I didn't know everybody there, generally you would introduce me like this: "Hey guys, this is my friend Jerrod. He's a police officer." I'd be like, what the fuck does that have to do with the barbecue? Right? So now, right off the bat, half the people you just introduced me to don't want nothing to do with me because they think I'm looking at them to see if they're breaking the law.
Yeah.
The other quarter wants to ask me every police-related question they've ever had. And then maybe a quarter is generally interested in me as a person. All simply off how I feed my family. right? And like on the flip side for you, if I took you to a place that was prominently conservative, maybe law enforcement based, and I introduced you, hey, this is my friend Ali, and he's in the marijuana vaporizing business. Immediately, you're going to lose half of them for nothing you've ever done except for try to make some money. So, Ali, I want to ask you this. Why, as Americans, do we identify so much of who we are with what we actually do?
I think it's because we have made workism like your religion. It's what you are. It's what we associate with your purpose, with your identity, with who you are. And I mean, it may come from the industrial age, right? We needed so many workers. We needed people to identify like, okay, like you're a mechanic, you're this, you're that. And that's what you took on. And in America, I don't know about anymore, but for a long time, we have been the most productive country in the world, right? I think like to be an American where people come from all over the globe to live the American dream, to work, to be successful, to make a living, that we have glorified work. We have glorified workism, and that is part of your identity and who you are, and part of the life blueprint, right? You go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, and that job is kind of like the main meat of the American life blueprint. So I think that we have just spent so much time identifying ourselves, our purpose with what we do for a living, that it has just become this belief that, you know, your purpose and your value is deeply tied to how you make your money.
Yes, I think it's interesting you said purpose, right? Because I would argue that most people don't feel what they do for a living is remotely close to their purpose, which leads to unhappiness. Right? How many people do you know that are like, tell you, you know, talk about what they do for a living, but it's not what they want to be doing?
Most people.
So it's not their purpose. They're just a means to an end. But somehow we get caught up identifying ourselves with that. And I don't know, you know, we got listeners around the world. So Nikki and some of the other ones that just come to mind right away, comment in and let us know if this is the same in other countries around the world, because I know Americans traditionally have longer work weeks, less vacation, longer hours than a lot of other countries. Maybe it's not something super unique to us, but it just really is interesting to me because it's so easy to get caught up in what you do for a living and allow that to kind of become your identity. So where does this pressure come from, right? Where does it come from? Like, how do we grow up thinking like, man, I got to get this good job so I can tell people that's what I do for a living, right? And why I don't want that job because I wouldn't want to tell people I do that for a living. Even though you can have any of these jobs and be a great person and provide for your family. So where does that come from? I think part of it, quite honestly, comes from parents, right? Because very few things will have kids do are designed to develop who they want to become. It's all designed on what they're going to be qualified to do, right? Go to school, get good grades. Why is that important? So you can get into college. Well, what's college important for? So you can get a good job, right? But none of that is who they want to be. We've talked about education before and kind of the standardized testing and the standardization of so much of that generally lacks a ton of creativity, where that is where people find themselves. And I just recently went through this, having 3 kids that took all different paths. They all finished high school. My oldest just graduated college. My my son in the middle, he's out exploring the world as himself, and my youngest is still trying to figure out what she wants to do. But no matter where we went, the first question adults would ask me is, okay, what are you going to do? And I'd always be like, why? How do they know what they're going to do? If you really want to know them, why don't you ask, who do you want to be?
So how do you, Jerrod, as a parent, how did you, offer support for your children to live up to their dreams and find out what they want to do without putting pressure on them to live up to certain stereotypes or expectations?
I mean, that's tough, right? Because it's a lot of pressure coming at them. And, they get it from all places, the education system, media, social media, and other parents. Like, I can't tell you how many times my kids go over to other parents' house, and the parents are like, I can't believe what your parents are doing. They're going to sell their house. They're just going to travel. And your dad left work way too young. Like, how are they going to make money? So I think one of the best things we've done for them is show them it's possible. Show them that you can take risk, and you can have a good career, make some money, put it aside, not get in debt, and then it opens up freedoms for you. So I think if I've done anything right as a parent, it's that we're showing them what is possible when you don't just fall into what everybody else is doing.
I love that.
And it's crazy though, right? Like, if you look at the people we really idolize in the world, and the people that have the most influence, and the people that you're like, oh, I would love to be able to do this, they're not the people that stay in the lanes with everybody else. They're the ones that get outside and do something creative and innovative.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we try to push so many people into that narrow focus of getting the safe job, having the safe life. Man, and unfortunately, a lot of people never really discover their true gifts or what they had to leave for the world.
And what do you think was different about your path or experience that led you to be able to do something so unorthodox?
Just not being afraid.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the biggest thing, is just, what are you afraid of? Like, why would we do jobs that we're not happy with, live in places we don't want to live, buy stuff we know we shouldn't be buying,
Mm-hmm.
and spend our one life doing that and not being truly happy? For many people, it's just the fear of what everybody else is going to think about them. The fear of, well, what if it doesn't work out?
So what about in the very beginning, Jerrod? Didn't you have some fear before actually making some of these moves?
I mean, yeah, we had fears that we talked to, like, okay, so you contingency, right? Like, okay, if this happens, what's our fallback? Right? If that happens, what can we do? But ultimately, like, it all works out.
Yeah.
That's the thing, like, I want to let my kids know. Like, my family's not perfect. My friends aren't perfect. My social circles definitely aren't perfect. So I always ask my kids, like, look at who surrounds us. Some are smarter than you. Some aren't as smart as you. Some have this talent. Some don't have that talent. Within there, you'll find your talents. But generally, if you keep working hard and just show up and believe in yourself, life kind of works out in your favor.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't have to have all these answers all the time.
No, and I love that you said that for the community there, because you guys, Jerrod just said that something that really stuck out, and it's that it all works out. And I want you guys to think about every single challenge you've encountered in your life. Every time you thought you weren't going to make it, look back at that and realize that you did. You figured it out, you overcame it, and every challenge, that fear, that unknown, that uncertainty, it's only temporary. So the only difference between Jerrod and anyone else who hasn't taken the step towards their dream that may be a little unorthodox, off the beaten path, off the blueprint of American living, is just the fact that they're not trying. You know, Jerrod went out, took a step, tried. He talked about the contingencies, looked at the worst case scenarios. We're like, all right, I'm willing to take this risk. And then, like he said, you're gonna figure it out. So I love that you said that, because I believe that's true. It's about overcoming fear, having faith. You don't have to have every single detail planned out to the T. You have to move forward with some degrees of uncertainty and just trust that you're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Well, and one of the best things for me to really address fear through my life is I got knocked out in front of 5,000 people. Right? Like, for many people, that'd be like the worst thing that could happen, right? Right behind public speaking. Well, I can do public speaking, and I got knocked out in front of 5,000 people, including my family and friends. I didn't die. They didn't quit being my friends. You know what I mean? So, like, when you stop and just, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe just put a little humor into some stuff. All right, I want to do this. Well, what's the worst that happens? That'd be a funny story to tell down the road, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what, like, why? And I think that's one of the things, like, I really tried to stress to my kids is don't be so serious about all this. Like, life is actually pretty fucking funny. You know, my youngest daughter's talking about moving to Arizona and driving down there. And, well, what if my tire blows out? Or what if this does that? And I'm like, okay, what if it does? What if it blows out in the smallest town in the middle of nowhere in Nevada? And you meet the car mechanic and fall in love. And he becomes the man of your dreams. And you have a family and you go on to have this amazing life that would have happened if you didn't have the courage to go on the road trip and face the fear that maybe your tire will blow out in the middle of Nevada. What if that happens?
Yeah.
Right?
What
It's all possible. You
Yeah.
know, and like look, you know, for a lot of years that I've known you, you've been the face of your company. And that was a big part of what you did, the marketing events, the media events, all the video stuff. Well, now as you transition, you get to redevelop you as who you want to be in a different light. But it's the facing the fear of letting go what you've already done. Right? Versus staying. Like, you could stay there and you could be successful and you could make money. But inside, you're like, that's not what I want to be doing.
Right.
So you have the courage to pivot. And I think a lot of people that we know have amazing talents in an area they're not using.
Yeah.
Simply because they won't face the fear of, what if I switch? Right? I left police work much younger than my friends. Well, what happens if none of my businesses work out? Well, guess what? I can still go back and be another policeman somewhere. Like you could always go do something else.
Yeah.
But we allow ourselves to believe that, if I do this and it fails, my life's over. Is it? It's only over if you let it be over. Right? Like, shit's gonna fail. Shit's not supposed to work out. But it'd be sad if you never even try.
Oh, yeah. The pain of regret hurts far more than any other pain.
I think so. I look back on my life, I don't regret the cuts and the bumps and the bruises and the concussion from getting knocked out. But I'd have regretted not taking that challenge.
All my biggest regrets in life are not taking action on things.
For sure.
Because I was too scared or too shy or too nervous or too whatever. And now I have found when there's a little bit of fear, I'm always excited if I just push through it and do it anyway. Even if on the back end, it didn't work out the way I wanted to. I always feel better if I push through that fear, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
And community, I want you guys to know that, like, it's not about not feeling that fear. Like, if you're really pushing yourself, you're going to feel that fear, and that's good. I like to think of it as excitement, emotional excitement. And, sometimes a little bit of fear, a little bit of anxiety, even identifying it in that way is very healthy for you. And it's about really being able to use that as an indicator for growth. You're feeling a little fear, a little nervous. Okay, this is a growth opportunity right here. And even in your day-to-day, it doesn't have to be something as big as changing your career. I'm talking about even day-to-day. Like, a good example, I was on the flight last night. And sometimes I don't feel like, I feel like, oh, maybe this person doesn't want to engage and doesn't want to talk. But that's one of my training grounds, right? And it's just socializing of like, introduce yourself, say hello, start having that conversation. And just kind of circling back, I'm thinking about, I didn't ask people on the plane what do they do for a living, because it's a different environment, right? So for them, I'd be like, oh, was this vacation? Learning a little bit more about their trip. They tell me why they're there. Okay, asking a little bit more of their family. It's a little bit more personal. Some people did ask me, what you do, but now that I'm thinking about it, I realize that in that situation, I'm not very curious as to what they do. Maybe if the guy was like in a real nice suit or something like that, I'd be a little more curious. But when it comes to like networking events, kind of circling back to your first question of why we associate so much value to that, networking events, business events, obviously you're going to be asking what they do, right? And for me, the way that I try to position my goals there, guys, is I'm trying to make good connections and stuff for myself. But what I have learned in my 6 years of being a business owner and entrepreneur is that the more value you can give without expecting anything directly in return, the more value is going to come back to you. So when I'm asking questions, I'm looking for ways of how I can give them value regardless of their position. Even if it's the janitor at a company, who knows, he might be good friends with the CEO, right? So if I'm asking him questions, I'm thinking about, do I have a contact? Do I have a way I can give him value? Because if I'm just producing value for people all the time, I'm going to be known as this person, like, dude, talk to Ali. Like, he knows a lot of people. He's always very helpful. He's always this and that. So you were talking about how we assign value to people depending on their career. I think it's a really good practice, especially in a networking event, to try and assign value to others through what you have to offer, through your networks, through whatever you can offer. So kind of just circling back.
Yeah, but
to
I would
that.
say that's what you're doing there is not assigning value, right? You're seeing the person for the person regardless of the title and the relationships they have. And I think that's huge because I maybe you've experienced this where you're at a place that's maybe you don't necessarily belong. Like I've experienced that where I'm there and people get introduced to me and I can see they're not super interested in going any further. And you're like, man, that was kind of crazy. Like, but whatever, and I just never wanted to be that person. And, part of what I saw the dangers in allowing who I was to be determined by what I do is in police work. Like so many police officers, firemen, that is their identity. Like it's the first thing they tell people. It's all the shirts they wear. Everything they have says firemen or policemen. And then when they leave the profession, what are they left with? Right? Because when you leave, you lose all the titles of your work. Right? If I came out and told you I was captain of this police department, you don't really give two shits. Right? Like you have no right? Because people in their career start to get a little bit of power. They get a title, they get authority, and there's a healthy balance there of using that professionally, but not letting it become who you are personally. Right? Because when you leave the career, if your whole identity has been built around what you've done as a job, well, hopefully you get to retire at some point, and then who are you? What's left, right? And that's sadly a fact here for our community. In America, more police officers kill themselves every year than are ever harmed by bad guys or girls. Right? And why is that? Why is that something I'm passionate about talking about in my law enforcement classes? It's because for many of them, many people, what they do becomes who they are. And when they can no longer do what they do, they don't have an identity. And the world looks very gray and dismal to them because they've lost everything that made them who they wanted to be. And that's a challenge we have to become, even if we have the job of our dreams. And it's the greatest thing ever. At some point, you're going to have to move on. So make sure you're preparing yourself by knowing who you are. And that's one of the things you asked earlier, Ali, like how were Andrew and I able to sell our house, sell the gym, buy an Airstream, and go live like this? Well, part of it is because, I don't know, maybe this is who I am. You know, like I don't know what I don't know out there in the world. But if I'm only going to allow myself to experience the same stuff I've already experienced because I know the outcomes, well, then I missed the potential of learning who I really could be.
Yeah.
You know,
So
like, go ahead.
just real quick, how do we begin to focus more on who we are? Because it can be really hard when the questions that you're asked all the time is what do you do? How do you like your job? But because we are so associated to what we do. So how would you suggest, Jerrod, that we focus more on who we are and who others are?
I think that's the key point right there. You start by focusing on who are the people around you, right? So make a conscious effort. If I get to meet somebody for the first time, I'm not going to ask, what do you do, is the first question. Ask, just like you were talking about, you did a great role model or role play there on the plane. Ask them about their family, like pay attention. They got a book about this. Ask them about the book to read. Like get to know who they are. In return, if I ask you who you are, most likely you're going to reciprocate with the same questions. Right? Because that's how conversations go. So I think being aware of who are the people around us, who are the people that serve us every day, who are the people that help us. Going all the way back to our constant banter with the grocery store clerks.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? Because we are interested in who they are. Why do they like seeing us in the grocery stores? Because we actually are interested in them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that's it. And then I would, if you're not sure who you are, you need to be developing it. Reading books, podcasts like this, taking classes. Ollie talks about joining clubs all the time, Toastmasters. Do stuff that helps you develop who you are. And if you don't know who you are, try some shit. You don't have to know all the answers already to get started. You know, like if you come and see what I'm doing up here in Wyoming now and compare it to what Jerrod of 20 years would have been doing, 20 years ago was doing, you would not recognize it. Because like the shit I do now, I'm like, I would never have thought I'd be doing this kind of stuff. And I actually enjoy it. But why? Because I let myself move past who I thought I was to see, do I even like this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, like think about how many people you know are just afraid to try new things. Right? And what if, yeah, you're absolutely right. Dude, you sell bee nails, move into this whole new world. And what if you get there and you're like, I don't really like this either? Then you go try something new.
Yeah.
Because we can always go back. You know,
Yep.
like selling a gym, I was like, oh my God, what if you miss coaching? Like, what are you going to do here? I could do it again. Just because I moved on to something doesn't mean I've lost all the skills I developed.
Yeah.
But what if by not being on the mats coaching every single day, it gives me more time to write a new book? And what if that book is really what my life's journey should have been? Or I get to focus on Andrea for the first time in our lives, and we just travel. And this travel is what my life should have been. Or I go out there and the freaking trailer breaks down, the truck blows up, we hate living in a small space. I can go back to coaching. I can go back to anything that I've already done.
I love the pronoia.
Yeah. Pronoia, that's good, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Why not? Why not have the most positive what ifs? Yeah, think of the worst case scenario, but then just what if on the side of all the wildest positive possibilities.
Well, think about how many people like have their fear of public speaking, right? Is that they're going to go out there and they won't be able to speak, and they have dreams that they're naked in front of the audience all the time. And you ever seen that happen?
No.
I've never been at a speech where anybody got up there and couldn't speak.
Or got naked.
Or got naked.
And
Right.
you know what? What if that happens?
You know what?
Who cares?
What about
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, like what if you started stuttering and were like, and had to walk off the stage? Okay. Everyone would probably just still clap and next speaker. Okay,
Yeah.
big deal. They'll forget about you in 2 seconds. What if your clothes magically disappeared and you're up there naked? It's not the first time someone sees a naked person.
Yeah.
What? Okay, big deal, right? Like actually have fun, humor with the negative what if situations, and then what if on the side of the wildest, most exciting possibilities.
And then tell me
Paranoia.
this: if you went to a speech, how many speeches have you been to? Or not even speeches, just any kind of event where somebody speaks. Memorial Day, 4th of July parade, politician rally, blah 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 blah. How many do you remember that you can be like, on this day at that time I heard this speech?
Zero.
Now I heard Barack Obama speak. And regardless of your political affiliations, I will tell you that dude is a fantastic orator. Fantastic, bar none. But I don't know what day it was. I don't even remember what he said. I just remember he's good. But now let me ask you this. You go to a rally and the speaker gets up there and his or her clothes fall off. You always remember that one. So what if, what if you think like, well, dude, the worst case scenario, I get up there, my damn clothes fall off. I'm going to go viral for having disappearing clothes. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think for our last question here, Ali, could we be happier if we focus more on who we were instead of what we do?
100%. And this ties into the purposeful practice I want to give. And I've said this on previous episodes of my question that I ask people. I'm very disciplined about asking this in any interaction. Like last night, I asked it to the airplane staff, right? I'll ask it to the cashier. I'll ask it to the waitress, to the bartender, to whoever. What's been the best part of your day today? And it lights people up. Even if I'm not really feeling it and I'm not as like, smiley and engaged, even if I ask it just like, what was the best part of your day today? People light up. And because that's a question that focuses more on who are they. And just that answer alone, it's going to give me a little insight as to who you are. Like one of the airplane attendants yesterday, he was like, it was my early morning workout. I really didn't feel like going, but I got it done. And it felt really good. And that tells me so much more than, okay, you work for Southwest Airlines, like that, his best part of the day. So purposeful practice for the community is come up with your question, your automatic question that you're always going to ask. That's not, what do you do for a living? Right? Something that's focused more on who they are. You can just use mine if that's comfortable. That way, you are automatically connecting with people more based on who they are than what they do. You can use mine of what's been the best part of your day today. You can ask more something of like, what's the type of person you want to be, or what kind of person are you? You can ask, what's your dream in life? Ask some of these questions and you will see that it's a happier conversation. You're no longer going through the motions, and you guys will answer that question yourself. Could we be happier if we focus more on who we are? 100%, billion percent, no doubt. Because when we're not focused on who we are and we're just talking more about the what we do, it's going through the motions. There's no emotion there. So give those a shot. Purposeful practice for the week is come up with your questions so you don't even have to think about it. That's just your go-to, and watch how much happier you will be and how others will be in your personal interactions. And that's why I'm a freaking celebrity when I go places, man. I'm a celeb at the grocery store. I'm a celeb on the airplanes. I get more than most in these social situations because I'm focusing more on who people are.
Yeah, I love it. And you're going to have these interactions regardless, right? Like you're going to go to the grocery store and have somebody check you out. You're going to go to a place and be seated. Imagine the benefit if when they see you, they know you're actually interested in them.
You're going to get the discounts. You're going to get that free appetizer. You're going to get that free dessert. You're going to get that extra seat in the front on the airplane because these people, people don't ask them questions that are focused on who they are. So it's an honor to someone when you ask them a question like that, and then they want to serve you even more. So even from a selfish standpoint, there's perks to being more focused on who people are for you.
And maybe that's what this is all about. When we focus on what we do, it's a little more selfish than we focus on who we can become or who we are. Right? Because for
Yeah.
most of us to really be who we are, we're going to have to be a little more selfless and a little more caring for others. And that does lead to happiness. And honestly, to me, it leads to being well balanced. And yeah, I spent 21 years of my life being a police officer, but it was never who I was. It was what I did in that stage of life. Right? At the end of my life, I'm going to have a bunch of chapters. There'll be a police chapter, a gym owner chapter, a podcast chapter, like all these chapters. That's who I am. No one job or title defines who I get to be. That was just what I did. So
Love that.
I challenge our audience, like, go out there and, make sure you're working on yourself. Make sure you're working on who you want to become. You're not so focused on what it is you want to do. And then dig deeper with the people around you and ask them and probe them. Who do they want to be? And how can you help bring value there? And how can you help facilitate who they want to become? One of the greatest, I was telling somebody the other day, one of the things I love most about our podcast, Ali, is sharing messages like this, interviewing people and helping them share their stories of who they are. Because everybody's story of who you are is important and brings value to others, and the world can hear them all. But if we limit ourselves to, no, my story is not important because I don't have the job title that I think I should, well, that's not good for your life.
Playing yourself, and it's not true.
And the world's missing out. What if your story inspires somebody else to go do that next great thing?
And it could, and it will, if you get out there and share it.
But it all starts with knowing who you are and working on who you want to become. And
Amen.
At no stage are you ever too late to become who you want to be. And you should always be working towards something more. We just had a drink last night with a 70-year-old guy, retired out of Jersey, lives out here now. Great shape, out hunting with his son all the time. And it was just fun. Like he's 70 and he's still excited about life, and you could feel it from him. And then you're around other people of that age that don't have that excitement or very dull, and you're like, okay, what's the difference here? Well, he's enjoying life. He's focused on who he wants to be. And I think that's something that's important for all of us, is always to be checking ourselves to make sure we're growing into who we want to become. Not like Ali said, going back to who we used to be and sharing glory day stories.
Yeah, it's a constant thing. So as we wrap up, team, purposeful practice for the week is come up with your question that you automatically ask in your interactions. Because here's the thing, you're not always going to feel motivated to start a conversation, right? But if you have your question locked down, it's much easier. You just ask it. That's a good discipline to practice, to push through these small little pockets of fear that are going to really train you to be able to push through these larger fearful times. So get your question. You can use mine. What's been the best part of your day? Maybe ask, what's your dream? Maybe ask, who are you? Right. With a smile. That's kind of like, whoa, people will be like, whoa, what is that? And you'll watch people light up. So that's a big purposeful practice for the week. Looking forward to hearing about what you guys come up with and the effects that it has on your day-to-day interactions.
Yeah, and then I'm looking forward to seeing many of you get over to Patreon and help support the cause as we share the purposeful message around the world.
Yep, definitely check those out, guys. Anywhere from $2 a month to $50 a month. If you get on that $25 a month or more plan, there's some massive value in there from being on our monthly mastermind, where we have done some incredible workshops, some very impactful workshops, some of them on creating your life purpose statement, your life philosophy, and much more. So that, I would say, is probably the most valuable monthly subscription on the podcast right now. I only $25 a month. There's some incredible value there. So go check out those tiers.
Yeah, and that's awesome. It's Ali or I or both of us together coaching you through some stuff, small group style, just like you'd get our workshop or our retreat coming up this November. So stay tuned for more information on that. It's going to be a small group, limited number of people are going to be coming down to it because we're not here to do any kind of cookie cutter program or any kind of mass production. Like if you come train with us, it's going to be individualized to you and to make sure we're getting you the most purposeful life you want to live.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.